I still remember the night she said it. 9 simple words that cracked something deep inside me. Let him sleep on the couch. It's his house too. But it wasn't her house. It was mine. If you're watching this, my friend, tell me where you're from, because I want to know if decency still lives where you live. And if you've ever been disrespected in your own home, then this story is for you. My name is Walter Greene, 71 years old, retired machinist, husband of one extraordinary woman. May God rest her soul, and father of a son who used to make me proud. Used to. That night started like any other. The Tigers had just lost again, and I was sitting in my recliner with a blanket over my knees, listening to the rain beat the porch roof. I could hear muffled laughter from the kitchen. My son Mark and his wife Lindsay were talking about their new car, some fancy hybrid I couldn't pronounce. They'd been living with me for 4 months. 4 long months that started with a promise, just until we get back on our feet, Dad. 3 months, tops. Well, month 4 had arrived with no sign of back on our feet. I didn't complain much. I'd been alone since my wife, Ellen, passed 2 years back. The house was too quiet. Having Mark around, even if he was glued to his phone half the time, made it feel less empty. But Lindsay, she was another story. Pretty girl, sharp as a tack, but her tongue could slice through oak. Every word she spoke carried that subtle tone. The one that said, "I'm doing you a favor by being here." She rearranged my living room furniture without asking, changed my grocery list, told me salt wasn't good for older people, so she started buying tasteless soup. And she called me Walter instead of Dad. Every time, Ellen used to say, "Respect isn't in the name, it's in the tone." And Lindsay's tone could have peeled paint. That night, I went to bed early. My knees were acting up, and I didn't want to hear another one of their little arguments about money. I'd loaned them enough, paid their car insurance once, covered groceries, even fixed Mark's dental bill when his coverage lapsed. But around 11:30, I woke to voices, not yelling, but sharp whispers, the kind that carry through walls. I heard my son say, "Dad's set. He's got the house, pension, savings. He doesn't need all that space." And Lindsay, with that ice water tone, said, "Then he can move downstairs. We'll take the master bedroom." I sat up. The clock glowed red. 11:37. My heart started that slow, angry rhythm it hasn't done since Ellen's funeral. That rhythm that says you better listen, but you might not like what you hear. Then came the sentence that would burn itself into my bones. "If he doesn't like it," Lindsay said, "let him sleep on the couch." The couch, in my own house. The same couch I bought 40 years ago with my first tax return. The same one where Ellen used to fall asleep watching Hallmark movies. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard, but then Mark mumbled, "He won't go for that," and Lindsay said, "Then we'll make him see reason. He's getting old. He'll forget what he said in the morning." Forget. That word hit me harder than all the others, because lately people had started talking to me like I was fading. My doctor, the neighbors, even Mark sometimes. Little hints, little sighs, like I was one missed pill away from being helpless. But I wasn't helpless. Not yet. I swung my legs out of bed, grabbed my cane, and walked down the hall. My slippers made no sound on the old wood floor. The kitchen lights spilled under the door. I could see their shadows moving, hers sharp and quick, his slow and guilty. I didn't go in. I didn't shout. I just stood there long enough to hear Lindsay laugh and say, "Trust me, Mark, I know how to handle old people. That was it. That was the night I stopped being nice. The next morning, I made coffee strong enough to clean an engine block. I sat at the table, same chair I'd sat in since 1984, and waited. Lindsay came in first, wearing one of those expensive robes that looked more like a costume than clothing. She gave me her usual fake smile. "Morning, Walter. You're up early." "I could say the same," I said, stirring my coffee. "Heard you up late talking about my sleeping arrangements." Her smile froze, like a picture in a frame. "Oh, that? You must have misunderstood." I leaned forward. "I don't misunderstand my own name. I heard you just fine." Mark walked in then, rubbing his eyes, already caught in the crossfire. "Dad, we were just talking about—" "I know what you were talking about," I said. "You were talking about where I should sleep." "In my house." Lindsay sighed. "You're twisting it. We were thinking long-term, Walter. Maybe you'd be more comfortable downstairs, closer to the laundry, the bathroom, closer to being out of your way," I said. "You mean that?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, like a fish on dry land. Mark muttered, "We were just thinking practically." I took a slow sip. "You want to know what's practical? Keeping a roof over your head. You like this roof?" They both nodded, uneasy. "Good," I said. "Then remember who built it." I left the kitchen without another word. Sometimes silence has more weight than shouting. Rehook moment, 5 minutes in. If you're still listening, my friend, let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone forget who you were? Not your name, but your worth. That's the kind of forgetting that wakes you up sharper than any alarm clock. That afternoon, I drove to town, to the bank, the county records office, and one very helpful attorney named Mr. Carson. By dinner time, my will had a new addendum. By nightfall, I'd spoken to a real estate agent. When I came home, Lindsay was rearranging my living room. Again. She'd moved my wife's rocking chair into the basement. "It's taking up space," she said. I smiled. "You're right. It's time to make more space." She didn't catch the meaning. Mark was on the couch watching TV. I stood behind him for a moment, remembering when he was little, sitting on that same couch with Ellen, eating popcorn, believing life was simple. I wished he'd stayed that boy. "Mark," I said quietly, "I need to talk to you after dinner." He barely looked up. "Sure, Dad." After dinner, I told them. Calm, straightforward, no anger. "I've decided to sell the house," I said. "I've had an offer. It's a good one." Lindsay laughed like I'd told a joke. "You're kidding." "No," I said. "You've got 48 hours to pack." Mark blinked, confused. "What? Dad, you can't just—" "I can," I said, "and I will." Lindsay's voice went cold. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack," I said. She stood up, hands on her hips. "Where will we go?" "Not my problem," I said. "You wanted me on the couch. You can keep it. I'll leave it with the house." Mark stared, speechless. "Dad, you can't do this to us." "To us?" I said. "Son, I didn't do this. You did, the moment you forgot who this home belonged to." I walked out before they could reply, went straight to my shed, sat in the old wooden chair, and let the quiet wrap around me like armor. 48 hours, that's what I'd given them. 48 hours to remember the man they'd mistaken for a doormat. That night, I slept fine for the first time in months. I woke to the sound of boxes being taped shut and whispered arguments. I didn't interfere. Sometimes people need to pack their pride along with their things. By the second evening, Lindsay came to my door. She had mascara streaks down her face. "Walter, please, we have nowhere to go." I looked at her for a long moment, not angry, not smug, just done. "You had a home," I said. "You just couldn't stand the man who built it." She started to speak, but I closed the door gently. Mark didn't come to say goodbye. He left his key on the counter. That hurt more than I'll admit. When the house was quiet again, I walked through it, room by room, touching the walls, the frames, the memories. Then I picked up the phone and called Mr. Carson. "List it," I said, "and make sure the buyers know one thing. The old man's still got a backbone." Subscribe reminder, natural mid-story placement. If this story feels close to your heart, if you've ever had someone mistake your kindness for weakness, please, my friend, subscribe. Because stories like these vanish unless we keep them alive together. That night the rain came again, steady and soft. The house felt lighter, cleaner, like it had forgiven me for waiting this long. Tomorrow, I'd start packing my things. But tonight, I sat on the couch, yes, that couch, and watched the lightning flash over the street. I thought of Ellen and how proud she'd be, and I thought of Mark, wherever he was, learning a lesson he should have learned long ago. When you forget respect, you lose more than a house. You lose your home. And that's when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It read, "You think you've won, old man. You haven't seen the last of us." I leaned back, smiled to myself, and whispered, "Maybe not. But you've already seen the last of my mercy. Because this story, my friend, it wasn't over yet." The text glowed on my phone, like a match in the dark. "You think you've won, old man. You haven't seen the last of us." At first, I thought maybe it was just anger, the kind of thing people say when pride's been evicted along with their furniture. But something in those words felt colder, calculated. I locked the door, checked the windows, and sat on the couch, the same one they wanted me to sleep on, and let my thoughts race like a bad movie reel. They'd only been gone 6 hours, and already Lindsay had found a way to make trouble. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from, because maybe where you live, people still know how to leave gracefully. Here in Michigan, apparently, they leave fingerprints on your peace of mind. The next morning, I woke up early. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stop hearing that message in my head. I made coffee, looked out the window, and noticed something strange. My trash bin, which I'd rolled to the curb last night, was now halfway up the driveway. The lid was open, and papers were scattered. Someone had gone through it. I stepped outside, the morning air biting at my neck. I bent down, picked up one of the papers, an old insurance statement, nothing special, and saw footprints in the dew. 2 sets, one small, one heavier. They led straight to the street. Now, I've never been a paranoid man, but you don't live 7 decades without learning that coincidence is often just a polite word for somebody's lying. I called the local police. Officer Daniels showed up within the hour. Young guy, probably mid-30s, polite, but with that look that said, "I've seen worse." "What makes you think it's them, Mr. Greene?" he asked, jotting notes. "Because nobody else would care about my garbage," I said, "unless they're looking for something to use against me." He nodded, glanced around the property, and said, "Any cameras?" "No," I said. "Didn't think I needed them in my own neighborhood." "Well, I'd suggest installing one now, he said. I'll file a report, but without proof, there's not much we can do. Proof, always proof. Funny thing about proof, you never need it until it's too late. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware store and bought 2 security cameras, motion lights, and a new deadbolt. The cashier, a kind old lady with glasses sliding down her nose, said, "Everything okay, Mr. Greene?" "Just upgrading," I said with a smile. "Tired of people thinking I'm too old to notice things." She nodded. "Good for you. Folks forget that the older you are, the better you are at seeing what's missing." That line stuck with me. By evening, the cameras were up. One aimed at the driveway, one at the back porch. I poured myself a cup of tea and settled into my recliner to watch the feeds on my tablet. Nothing for hours, just the quiet rhythm of a house relearning solitude. But at 11:18 p.m., the motion alert pinged. The camera feed flickered, then showed movement near the shed. A figure, tall, hoodie pulled up. I zoomed in, heart pounding. The face came into focus, blurry but familiar. Mark, my son. He was carrying something long, maybe a crowbar, maybe just a pipe. He walked to the side window, peered in, then turned toward the door. I didn't move, I just watched, because sometimes seeing is the only way to believe how far someone's fallen. He didn't try to break in. He just stood there for a minute, then walked away. The next morning, I called Officer Daniels again. He came by, looked at the footage, and whistled low. "That's your son?" "Used to be," I said. He scratched his chin. "He didn't commit a crime technically, but I can give him a trespass warning." "You sure you want that?" "Yes," I said. "Let him know I'm done playing family counselor." For the next few days, things calmed down. The air felt cleaner. I started packing boxes for the move. Personal stuff. Ellen's photos, my old Navy medals. I even laughed once or twice, remembering how she used to say, "Don't let fools rent space in your head. They'll never pay." But peace doesn't last long when people mistake kindness for weakness. On Friday night, I got another text. This one said, "You'll regret this. We'll get what's ours one way or another." That's when I knew. They weren't just angry. They were planning something. I sent the message to Officer Daniels. He called within minutes. "Mr. Greene, that's harassment. I can open a case file, but it's tricky unless they show up again. You want me to put a patrol on your street for a few nights?" "Yes," I said. "That'd help me sleep better." He sighed. "I'll do what I can." Saturday morning, the patrol car passed twice before noon. I waved. The officer waved back. For a while, I almost felt protected. Then, around dusk, a black SUV parked across the street, tinted windows, engine running. It sat there. 5 minutes, 10, 15. I walked out onto the porch, cane in hand, and stared right at it. The window rolled down. "Lindsay." She smirked, waved her phone, and shouted, "Hope you enjoy your retirement, Walter." Then she laughed, loud and mean, and drove off. I just stood there. Something in me snapped right then, like a wire pulled too tight. Midway rehook, 5-minute mark. If you're still listening, friend, remember this. Some battles in life aren't fought with fists or words. They're fought with patience. And patience, when mixed with wisdom, can look a lot like revenge. That night, I made a plan. No shouting, no confrontation, just chess, and I was done being the pawn. Sunday morning, I went to my lawyer, Mr. Carson, again. I want to amend the will, I told him. Again. He raised an eyebrow. They've been bothering you? Let's just say they've reminded me why locks have keys and hearts don't. He smiled faintly. All right, what do you want to do? I want to set up a donation, I said. Half the proceeds from the house sale go to the Veterans Shelter Fund. The other half goes to a trust for single fathers who actually raise their kids right. He laughed. Poetic. Make sure Mark knows, I said. Let him read it himself. Done. When I left the office, the clouds were rolling in, thick, grey, and heavy. Fitting, I thought, the kind of sky that knows secrets. Monday morning, I got a knock at the door. Officer Daniels again. But this time, he looked serious. Mr. Greene, your son and daughter-in-law filed a claim, he said. What kind of claim? They're alleging you sold the house under duress, that you're not mentally sound. I laughed bitterly. Let me guess, Lindsay wrote it? He nodded. Probably, but they don't have proof. We just have to follow up. I handed him the latest video footage from my cameras. Here's your proof. That's Mark sneaking around my property. That's Lindsay sitting outside watching me. You tell me who's unstable. He grinned. That'll do. For the next few days, I let silence work its magic. Mark tried calling twice. I didn't answer. Lindsay sent me a text that said, "You can't cut family out of your life." I replied, "Watch me." That's when she went quiet. Friday afternoon, I met with the real estate agent to finalize the sale. She was a young woman named Clara, polite, efficient, no small talk, just the way I liked it. The buyers love the place, she said. You'll close next week. Good, I said. It's time. As I signed the last page, I felt something lift off me, like years of disappointment finally finding the door. Clara smiled. You seem relieved. I'm done giving people rent-free space in my peace, I said. That evening, I went to the park, where Ellen's bench still stands. There's a little brass plaque on it that says, "Sit, breathe, remember what matters." I sat, breathed, and remembered everything. How Ellen always believed in dignity. How she told me, "Walter, revenge only works if it teaches them something. Otherwise, it just eats you." So I made sure mine would teach. When Mark called again that night, I picked up. His voice was low, shaking. "Dad, I'm sorry. We were desperate. Lindsay lost her job. I said things I didn't mean." "I know you did," I said calmly, "but desperation isn't a license for disrespect." He hesitated. "What can I do to fix it?" I smiled faintly. "Learn from it. That's how you fix it." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Lindsay's leaving. She said she can't handle this anymore." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And I meant it. Not for her, but for him. "Dad," he said softly, "do you hate me?" I looked out of the window, at the same streetlight Ellen used to wave at when we came home late. "No," I said, "I don't hate you. But I'm done waiting for you to grow up." He exhaled. "I understand." And for the first time in a long time, I think he actually did. When I hung up, I felt the kind of quiet you only get after a storm. Not peace, exactly, but clarity. The house was sold. The papers were signed. The threats were over. But I didn't feel victorious. I just felt right. Because revenge isn't about winning. It's about closing the door without slamming it. Mid-story, subscribe prompt. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever been disrespected by the very people you loved most, hit that subscribe button. You and I, we keep these stories alive, so nobody else has to live them alone. That night, I walked out to the porch one last time. The moonlight hit the roses Ellen planted before she passed, the ones Lindsay always called old-fashioned. They were blooming again. I whispered, "Looks like you were right, sweetheart. Respect always grows back when weeds are gone." And for the first time in months, I slept without checking my phone, because the war was over, and dignity had won. The following week passed quietly, too quietly. The house felt hollow, stripped of voices, but not of memories. Each morning, I'd make coffee, open the blinds, and breathe in the silence like medicine. The papers were signed, the sale was final. And yet, the unease lingered, that sense that something wasn't finished. If you're listening to this story, my friend, tell me, have you ever felt peace that still kept one eye open? That was me. Because peace, I've learned, doesn't mean danger's gone. It just means you've earned a break before the next test. 3 days after closing the sale, I got a knock on the door. Not the gentle kind. The kind that comes in threes and sounds like a demand. I looked through the peephole. Officer Daniels. And next to him, Lindsay. Her hair was messy, makeup streaked, but her eyes still carried that same venomous glint. I opened the door halfway. "Morning, officer," I said. "What's the occasion?" Daniels nodded politely. "Mr. Greene, Mrs. Martin here." "Mrs. Greene," Lindsay interrupted sharply. "We're still married." He sighed. "Mrs. Greene wanted to retrieve some belongings she claims were left here." I looked at her. "You mean the things you took when you left? Or the ones you stole before you did?" Her jaw tightened. "I left my mother's necklace. Sentimental value." I studied her for a long moment. Ellen used to say, "A liar's eyes always blink too often when they pretend to care." And Lindsay was blinking, like she'd swallowed dust. I stepped aside. "Fine. You've got 5 minutes." She swept in, perfume and attitude in equal measure. Officer Daniels followed, polite but alert. She walked straight to the master bedroom, my bedroom, and began opening drawers. "You mind telling me what you're really after?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just glanced at the nightstand where Ellen's photo used to be, now empty, and whispered under her breath, "He really sold it." "That's right," I said. "House and all." She spun around. "You can't just erase us like that." I chuckled softly. "Erase you?" "No, Lindsay. You erased yourselves when you started treating respect like rent you didn't have to pay." Daniel stepped forward. "All right, ma'am. You got what you came for?" Lindsay scowled. "No, but I'm leaving." And she brushed past me, muttering something under her breath. Something about karma. I watched her drive off, her taillights disappearing into the drizzle. Daniels lingered. "You okay, Mr. Greene?" "Better than ever," I said. "But I think the storm's not done yet." He nodded. "You've got good instincts. Keep your cameras running." That night, I sat with a cup of tea and watched the footage again. Every click, every rustle, every shadow, just to be sure she hadn't left a surprise behind. At 2 a.m., I saw it in the corner of the bedroom frame. A small black square, half hidden under the dresser. I froze the footage, zoomed in, A recorder. She'd planted a recorder. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at it. Then I started to laugh. A slow, tired laugh. The kind that comes when you realize people think you're too old to notice the obvious. Next morning, I called Daniels again. Found a little gift from Lindsay. He came by within the hour. We listened to the first few minutes. The tape started with her voice whispering, "He's paranoid. If he says anything crazy, I'll have proof he's unfit." Then Mark's voice, "Just stop. This is getting out of hand." Daniels hit pause, looked at me, and said, "You want to press charges for trespassing and illegal surveillance?" I smiled. "No, let her hang herself. Just keep the evidence safe." He nodded. "You're a patient man, Mr. Greene." I grinned. "No, just old enough to know revenge tastes better when it's not rushed." 2 days later, I got a call from Mark. His voice was brittle. "Dad, I heard about the house sale. You really gave away the money." "Yes," I said, "to people who actually help others." Silence. Then he said, "Lindsay's gone. She left last night. Took the car. I think she's meeting some lawyer." "Good for her," I said. "She told me you framed her," he blurted. "Said you planted something." I laughed softly. "Funny, she said the same about me." He hesitated. "Dad, was there a recorder?" "Yes. And you—" "I found it, Mark. She tried to make me look unstable. But your friend at the police knows the truth now." There was another pause. Then he whispered, "I didn't know she'd go that far." "Didn't you?" I asked quietly. "Or did you just not care to notice?" He didn't answer. "If you're still watching, my friend, here's something I've learned. People don't always change when they hurt you, but they change when they finally realize they can't use you anymore. That's when their world starts to crumble, not yours." That week, Officer Daniels called again. "Mr. Greene, we've got something." "What's that?" He hesitated. "We traced Lindsay's recent calls. She's been contacting a man, private investigator, trying to gather evidence against you for elder abuse." I laughed. "Elder abuse? From the man they tried to kick onto his own couch?" "Exactly," Daniels said. "She's digging her own hole." By Friday, the storm broke, literally and figuratively. Heavy rain, wind screaming through the trees, thunder shaking the windows. I sat by the fire, listening to it all, when headlights flashed across the driveway. Then, pounding on the door. Not gentle this time, desperate. I opened it to find Mark, drenched and shaking. "Dad," he gasped, "she's gone crazy. She's threatening to tell the cops you assaulted her." I frowned. "And what brought this on?" "She found out you recorded her. She thinks you hacked her phone." I sighed. "She recorded me, Mark. I didn't touch her phone." He ran a hand through his soaked hair. "I know. I just don't know what to do. She's losing it. She said she's going to ruin all of us." I motioned for him to come in. "Sit down, son. Dry off. Let's talk like adults for once." He sat, trembling. "I made mistakes, Dad. I thought moving in would help us get ahead. I didn't realize how much we'd hurt you." I looked at him, truly looked at him, and for a moment, I saw the boy Ellen raised, not the man Lindsay molded. "Son," I said softly, "there's still time to fix yourself, but you'll have to do it without her." He stared at the fire, eyes glistening. "She already filed something with the court." said you're emotionally abusive. They might contact you. Let them, I said calmly. I've got nothing to hide. He nodded slowly. She's not who I thought she was. I smiled sadly. Most of us learn that lesson too late. The next day, I went down to the police station. Officer Daniels greeted me with that knowing look again. You were right, he said. She filed a false report. But when we pulled the recorder from your house, guess what else we found? What? She forgot to delete her test clips. You can hear her rehearsing what she was going to accuse you of. I laughed so hard, I almost spilled my coffee. Guess that's proof enough? He nodded. We'll make sure this never touches your record. She's in deeper trouble than she realizes. That night, I got another text. This one wasn't angry. It just said, I'm sorry. It was from Mark. For the first time, in a long time, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, but understanding. Sometimes it's not about punishing people. It's about letting them watch you live better without them. I poured myself another cup of tea, turned off the lights, and sat in silence. The firelight flickered across Ellen's photo, and for a second, it almost felt like she was there, smiling that quiet smile that said, you did the right thing. Subscribe reminder. If this story reminds you of something you've lived, if you've ever had to choose peace over pride, please subscribe. Because somewhere out there, another heart needs to hear that strength can be soft and quiet can still be powerful. The next morning, a letter arrived from the lawyer's office. It was short, direct. The house sale had closed completely, the donation had cleared, and the fund was officially renamed the Ellen Greene Home Grant for Single Fathers. I smiled when I read that. That was her kind of ending, but as I folded the letter, I heard a sound outside, the soft crunch of gravel. When I looked through the blinds, a car sat idling at the curb. It wasn't Mark's, it wasn't Lindsay's either. And there, on the windshield, was a single envelope with my name written on it. The rain hadn't stopped since morning. It came down in long, thin lines that made the world look like it was crying. That envelope sat on my windshield, damp at the edges, my name written in shaky ink. Walter. If you're watching this, my friend, tell me, have you ever stood in front of something simple, ordinary, but your gut told you it would change everything? That's what that envelope felt like. Small, soft, but heavy, with meaning. I looked up and down the street. No car, no figure, no sign of anyone. Just the whisper of the rain. I brought it inside, wiped it dry, and opened it carefully. Inside was a single page. The handwriting was familiar. Dad, I know you'll probably never forgive me, but I need to tell you the truth. Lindsay was planning everything, from the start. She never loved me. She wanted what you had. I found her messages to a lawyer, a bank account she hid, and a note she left for someone else. I'm leaving Michigan for a while, maybe for good. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope one day I'll earn your respect again. Mark. For a while, I just stood there, holding the letter in one hand and my heart in the other. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I just felt done. You know that feeling when you stop swimming and finally let the current carry you? That was me. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Ellen and I once talked about our future, about Mark, about how hard life could be, but how love always made it worth it. And I realized something. Sometimes love doesn't end. It just grows quieter, stronger, like old roots under the frost, waiting for spring. That evening, I took a walk through the neighborhood, umbrella in hand, coat zipped, the air sharp but clean. The for sale sign was gone now. The new owners, a young couple with two little girls, had already moved in. Through the window, I could see them. The father fixing a lamp, the mother laughing, the kids chasing each other around the living room. And you know what? I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel loss. I felt peace. Because that's what Ellen would have wanted. For that house to be filled with love again, not bitterness. She always said, "A home isn't the walls, Walter. It's the people who still pray inside them." So I walked past it with a smile. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. The next morning, I stopped by the police station to thank Officer Daniels. He shook my hand and said, "You handled all this better than most folks half your age." I laughed. "That's because age teaches you when to fight and when to walk away." He nodded. "By the way, Lindsay's been charged with filing a false report and harassment. She's not coming back to Michigan anytime soon." "Good," I said softly. "The weather's nicer elsewhere." Later that day, I drove to the Ellen Greene Home Grant Office, the foundation we created from the house sale. A small sign on the window said, "Helping single fathers rebuild their lives, one home at a time." Inside, the receptionist recognized me. "Mr. Greene? You should see the faces of the men we've helped. Some of them cry when they sign the papers." I smiled. "Good. That means it's working." She handed me a file, pictures of 3 fathers and their children, standing in front of new apartments. I looked at their smiles and thought, maybe this is what justice really looks like. Not punishment, but purpose. That night, I sat on the back porch, the one still creaking under my boots, and poured a cup of tea. The stars were out, the sky finally clear. I whispered, "Well, Ellen, it's done." You know, she always said, forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about not letting hate take another meal at your table. And I think she was right. Mark never came back to live here. But a few months later, he sent me a photo. Him standing beside a worn pickup truck, looking tired, but better. Behind him, a small cabin near a lake. The message read, "Building something new, Dad. Trying to earn back your faith." I texted back, "You already did. Just don't lose it again." Rehook for final 5 minutes. If you're still listening, my friend, let me tell you something important. Life will test your patience. People will test your love. But when they do, remember, silence can speak louder than shouting. And sometimes, letting go is the loudest revenge. A few months later, I got a call from Officer Daniels again. He sounded lighter this time. "Mr. Greene, remember that recorder? Turns out it helped us uncover another case. Lindsay tried the same trick on someone else before you. You saved more than yourself." I laughed. "Guess that's one way to leave a legacy." He chuckled. "You're tougher than you look, sir." "No," I said. "Just old enough to stop pretending I'm not." When I hung up, I felt something shift. Not in the air, but inside me. That final piece of bitterness finally let go. I turned off the porch light, looked up at the stars, and thought of all the stories that never get told. The quiet battles, the small revenges, the soft triumphs that nobody claps for. That's what this story is, my friend. Not about money, not about houses, not even about revenge. It's about remembering that you still matter, no matter how many people forget. The world moves fast these days. Kids talk over their elders. People mistake wisdom for weakness. But if this old man has learned anything, it's that kindness is a weapon when you learn to aim it right. So when Lindsay told my son to make me sleep on the couch, she thought she was humiliating me. But really, she was teaching me something. She reminded me that even love needs boundaries, that respect isn't inherited, it's earned, and that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one planning the smartest kind of revenge. Final subscribe moment. If you've ever felt disrespected by your own, if you've ever been told you're too old, too soft, or not needed anymore, my friend, this story is for you. Because I want you to know you are still strong, you are still worthy, and you are never too old to fight back. Quietly, wisely, beautifully. So please, subscribe, because the world forgets people like us unless we tell our stories, and I'll be here, week after week, to make sure they never fade away. That night, before bed, I looked at Ellen's photograph one last time. She seemed to smile, the way she used to when I fixed something without being asked. I whispered, "You were right, love. They thought they took the house, but really, we took back our peace." And then I turned off the light, knowing that some victories don't make noise. They just last forever.